If you've flown anywhere in the US, you've probably seen them. Those bright yellow planes. Spirit Airlines. Famous for their super low fares. But behind that familiar brand, the company is in an absolute financial nosedive. And right now, it is fighting for its very survival. So let's break down what's really going on.
And yeah, let's not waste any time. We're going to jump right to the heart of the problem. You see this number? That is Spirit's net loss for the third quarter of 2025 alone. They lost nearly $1/3 billion in just 3 months. I mean, it's a staggering figure that really sets the stage for this dramatic story of crisis and, well, a high-stakes gamble at a comeback.
So to really get what's happening, let's think of this like a medical exam. Our first step is the diagnosis, checking the vital signs from their latest financial report. And spoiler alert, the patient is in critical condition.
This table, well, it tells a pretty stark story. You can see their revenue has dropped, but their expenses are still over $1 billion. The key takeaway here is simple. They're spending far, far more than they're bringing in. And yeah, while that operating margin looks like it's improved, a negative 14% still means they are bleeding a significant amount of cash on every single flight.
And this is not a new problem. To really underscore just how dire the situation is, Spirit is currently operating under its second Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing. That's a court-supervised attempt to reorganize in less than a single year. This isn't just a rough patch. We're talking about a recurring existential crisis.
Okay, so we've established the diagnosis. It's critical. Now let's move on and examine the symptoms. What are the underlying operational failures that are causing these catastrophic financial results? This chart gets to a core problem. For a low-cost airline, the whole business model is simple. You have to keep your planes in the air making money. A year ago, each plane flew about 10 hours a day. Now, that's down to just 7.3. That means their most expensive assets are just sitting on the ground doing nothing for a huge chunk of the day. And that usually points to deeper issues like grounded aircraft or just an inefficient network. And that drop in how much they use their planes, it has a direct impact on this next number. This represents the year-over-year plunge in Spirit's total capacity, or, just the number of seats they have available to sell. With planes flying less, their entire network has basically shrunk by almost a quarter.
And this creates a devastating domino effect. Fewer flying planes means almost 25% fewer flights taking off. And the planes that are flying are also emptier. The load factor, which is just a fancy way of saying how full the plane is, dropped by over 6 percentage points. The bottom line is painfully simple. They have a much smaller airline, and even those planes aren't as full. Okay, I know. It sounds incredibly bleak. But if you dig deep inside this financial wreckage, there are actually a few small glimmers of hope. A couple of positive signs that suggest their new strategy just might, have a pulse.
And this brings us to what I'm calling the Spirit paradox. The problem, as we've just seen, is that they're flying far fewer people. But the silver lining, and this is the really surprising part, is that they're actually earning more money from each person who does fly. So, how is that even possible?
Well, it's because the average amount of money Spirit collected from each passenger jumped from about $105 last year to over $118 this year. That's a pretty significant increase, and it shows that despite all the chaos, they're getting better at pulling in revenue from the customers they still have.
And this just reinforces that point. Their average yield, which is the fare they collect for each mile a passenger flies, is up a healthy 14%. What this suggests is that their big push to raise fares, or more likely to sell more add-ons like bags and seats, well, it's showing some early signs of success.
So, that brings us to the treatment plan. Faced with this diagnosis, Spirit has embarked on a radical, really high-risk restructuring plan. We're not talking about small tweaks here. This is a complete all-or-nothing gamble to save the company.
The plan pretty much boils down to 3 core pillars. First, optimize the fleet, get rid of those expensive, older planes. Second, stop trying to be everywhere and instead focus their smaller network on strong, profitable hubs. And third, introduce new premium products to try and attract customers who are willing to pay a little bit more.
And listen, this isn't just a theory on a whiteboard, it's already happening. They're actively getting rid of old leases and pushing back deliveries of new planes. They're making a huge bet on their Miami hub by adding 30 new routes there. And yep, they've rolled out new fare options like Go Big and Go Comfy to try and capture more of your money.
All of this action, all of this strategy,
It all leads to the one question that really matters. After looking at the diagnosis, the symptoms, and this radical treatment plan, what is the final prognosis? Is Spirit going to survive?
This quote says it all. And it isn't from some skeptical journalist or analyst, okay? This comes directly from Spirit's own leadership in their official filings. For a company to actually admit that it has substantial doubt about its own survival, that is an incredibly rare and, frankly, sobering statement.
Ultimately, their entire future hangs on two things. First, their bankruptcy restructuring has to be successful. And second, they absolutely must secure new funding to keep the lights on while they try to turn things around. Neither of those is a guarantee, not by a long shot. And that leaves us with a final, much broader question to think about. You know, Spirit's model of ultra-low fares worked for a really long time. But now, with costs rising and competition as fierce as ever, is their struggle just a one-off case, or could it be a warning sign for the entire low-cost airline industry?